Bullies mocked and tried to humiliate a girl, but what she did next left the entire school stunned. Derek Thompson's hand gripped the leather piece hanging around Jasmine's neck, yanking it so sharply she nearly stumbled. The cafeteria at Riverside Academy froze. 300 students stopped mid-sentence, forks and trays hanging in the air, eyes locked on the scene. "Well, look at this," Derek sneered, his voice cutting through the silence. "The new girl with her fancy collar." How adorable, his fingers pressed into the leather, forcing Jasmine's head back. 17-year-old Jasmine Carter had never imagined her first day at the city's most exclusive private school would end with her being dragged around in front of everyone. The collar wasn't just an accessory, it was a handmade heirloom from her grandmother, a piece of her heritage. Now it had become a toy in the hands of Riverside's most feared bully. "Let her go, Derek!" Madison Phillips shouted, standing up from the cheerleaders' table. But even her trembling voice betrayed fear. Everyone knew Derek wasn't just another student. He was the son of the region's wealthiest contractor, the untouchable king of Riverside Academy. Derek laughed, the sound sending shivers across the room. "Why would I let her go? She clearly likes it. Maybe we'll parade her around the courtyard too." His friends Tyler Harrison and Blake Morrison erupted in cruel laughter, recording the entire thing on their phones. But what none of them knew was that Jasmine wasn't just another scholarship kid trying to survive in a world of privilege. She was the daughter of Michael Carter, a former Special Forces instructor who ran a self-defense academy in town. Since the age of 8, Jasmine had trained in Krav Maga, Jiu-Jitsu, and Muay Thai every single day. As Derek pulled tighter, expecting her to panic, Jasmine stayed perfectly calm. Her eyes didn't show fear. They carried a dangerous calmness that only someone who had faced worse could possess. "You're going to let me go now," Jasmine said softly, but her voice sliced through the silence like a blade. "This is your last chance." Derek sneered. "Or what? You'll run crying to Daddy? People like you don't belong here. Better learn that quick." And then it happened. Jasmine smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not one of submission. It was the quiet, certain smile of someone who knew exactly what was coming next. Students whispered, confused by her composure. Why wasn't she screaming? Why didn't she fight back? What they didn't realize was that Jasmine's mind was already mapping Derek's every mistake, every weak point, every angle. Years of training had taught her that patience was the deadliest weapon. What unfolded that afternoon, captured on shaky cell phone videos, wouldn't just be a cafeteria drama, it would become the turning point that forever changed Riverside Academy. Because some people crumble under pressure, but others turn into diamonds, and Derek Thompson was about to discover which one Jasmine Carter was. Derek yanked harder on the strap, forcing Jasmine to stumble forward. What he couldn't comprehend was why she didn't cry, beg, or break down the way he had expected. Instead, she studied him with unsettling focus, as if memorizing every detail of his expression, every word that left his mouth. Tyler Harrison, ever the faithful sidekick, raised his phone. "Man, this is going to be epic on my Insta. New student gets taught the rules at Riverside." He chuckled, shifting to get the perfect shot. That's when Jasmine's voice cut through the air like a blade. "You boys really have no idea what you just did, do you?" Derek blinked, momentarily thrown off by her calm, almost amused tone. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about consequences," Jasmine replied, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "You just assaulted me. And at least 20 people here are recording it. Imagine how your parents will feel when they see this on the evening news." Tyler froze mid-recording, his grin vanishing. Blake took a step back, suddenly uneasy, but Derek only tightened his grip. "You're bluffing. No one's going to believe a scholarship student over me." What Derek didn't know was that Jasmine had grown up documenting every injustice she witnessed. Ever since the day she watched her own father stopped and humiliated for simply walking in his own neighborhood, she had learned the power of evidence. Her father, Michael Carter, wasn't just another ex-soldier. He had served 2 tours overseas as an interrogation and counterintelligence specialist, decorated with a medal for bravery. But the lesson that shaped Jasmine most was what he repeated every day. In a world that tries to break you, your sharpest weapon isn't your fists, it's your mind. You know what's fascinating about cases like this, Jasmine said, her voice eerily steady. They spread like wildfire online. And once the media picks them up, everyone suddenly wants to know who the bullies are. Picture the headline: Prominent businessman's son attacks scholarship student at elite academy. Derek's face flushed red. Are you threatening me? I'm explaining physics, Jasmine replied coolly. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. You chose the action. Now you'll meet the reaction. Then something unexpected happened. James Mitchell, a quiet senior who rarely joined conflicts, rose from his seat. That's enough, Derek. Derek spun toward him, disbelief written across his face. Really, James? You're going to play the hero now? No, James said firmly, walking forward. I'm going to be the witness. And as student council president, I'll make sure this reaches the principal today. A murmur rippled through the cafeteria. One by one, students stood, first a handful, then dozens, until a crowd surrounded Derek and Jasmine. For the first time in years, Derek's power at Riverside was being openly challenged. But instead of retreating, arrogance drove him to escalate. You want to see what happens when someone goes against my family? He barked. Tyler, call my dad. Now. Tyler hesitated. Derek, maybe this isn't the best idea. Call him, Derek roared, jerking Jasmine so roughly she stumbled again. Let's see how brave these heroes are when half of them lose their scholarships. In that moment, Jasmine realized Derek had just made the mistake she had been waiting for. He had threatened dozens of witnesses, including the student council president, with retaliation. He had exposed himself completely. As Tyler nervously dialed, Jasmine closed her eyes for a brief second, centering herself. Her father's words echoed in her mind. The best fighters don't strike first. They wait until the enemy shows every weakness. Then they end it. Madison watched from across the room, astonished at Jasmine's eerie calmness. Each insult, each threat, only seemed to fuel a strength no one else could see. A silent fire born from injustice. Tyler's call finally went through. Derek smirked with the arrogant confidence of someone who believed himself untouchable. But what those privileged boys didn't realize was that every act of contempt was another nail in their own downfall. And Jasmine Carter? She had the kind of memory that never forgets. Tyler's voice trembled as he spoke into the phone, carefully leaving out details that might incriminate his friend. Derek, meanwhile, smiled with satisfaction. Tell him there's a scholarship student here stirring up trouble, he ordered. Say she's threatening my family. He yanked harder on Jasmine's collar, forcing her up on her tiptoes, but Derek had no idea that every word he spoke was being discreetly recorded, not by one or two, but by at least half a dozen students around the cafeteria. James Mitchell had quietly signaled the student council members, and they were already cataloging every threat, every hostile gesture, every single word Derek let slip. My father is on his way, Derek declared loudly to the growing crowd. And when he gets here, you'll see what happens when someone challenges my family. This school, this cafeteria, it all exists because we allow it. That was the moment Jasmine made her first calculated move. She didn't struggle. She didn't lash out. Instead, she calmly reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and raised it to Derek's face. Smile for the camera, she said, her voice like ice. I want your future employers to see exactly who you are. For a split second, Derek froze at her audacity. Then he slapped the phone from her hand, sending it skidding across the floor. No one records me without permission, he barked. Too late, said Madison Phillips. The cafeteria gasped as the cheerleader, popular, well-connected, always on Derek's side, stepped forward with her own phone raised high. "I already live-streamed it," she announced. 10,000 people are watching right now. Derek's expression cracked. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. "Madison, what are you doing? We're friends." "Friends don't do this to people," Madison shot back, her camera still streaming. "And they definitely don't do it because of someone's skin color." The room went dead silent. Derek's own ally had just turned against him. Jasmine stayed calm, watching everything unfold. Years of her father's tactical lessons echoed in her mind. The greatest victories are the ones where the enemy defeats themselves. "Let her go now," James Mitchell demanded, stepping forward. "The principal is on his way, and you don't want him to see this." "Shut up, James," Derek exploded. "Your father works for mine. One word from me, and he's out of a job." It was a fatal mistake. He had just publicly threatened another student's family, on camera, in front of witnesses, live-streamed to thousands. The murmurs in the cafeteria turned into outrage. "Did you hear that?" someone whispered. "He just threatened James's father." Jasmine could feel the shift. The trap had fully closed. Derek had exposed every weakness, holding her against her will, making threats, insulting families, and doing it all in front of the entire school. She let the silence settle, then spoke with calm precision. "My father always told me, true strength isn't about controlling others, it's about controlling yourself when others try to control you." Derek sneered. "Your father? Let me guess, another deadbeat who can't keep a job." The cafeteria froze. Even Tyler and Blake stepped back, realizing Derek had gone too far. Jasmine's voice was steady, each word deliberate. "My father," she said, "is Michael Carter, former Army Special Forces instructor, decorated for bravery in combat, and the founder of Carter Defense Academy." The name hit Derek like a punch. Everyone in town knew Carter Defense Academy. It was where police officers, military trainees, and even members of the local elite learned self-defense. For the first time, Derek's arrogance cracked, his jaw tightened, his bravado slipping. But with the crowd watching, his pride wouldn't let him retreat. "I don't care who your father is," he spat. "I run this place." And that's when the doors slammed open. Richard Thompson Sr., Derek's father, the powerful businessman who believed money could fix anything, strode into the cafeteria, followed closely by Principal Dr. Hawthorne and 2 school security guards. The room fell into absolute silence. Even Derek faltered, realizing this wasn't going to end the way he'd planned. Richard Thompson Sr. froze at the sight before him, his son gripping a student by the collar, surrounded by dozens of phones recording, a live stream already gathering thousands of views. His voice came out low and dangerous. "Derek, let her go, now." For the first time, Derek realized the weight of the situation, but it was too late. The damage was already done, documented, broadcast, irreversible. Jasmine felt the pressure on her collar ease slightly, but Derek still refused to release her completely. She knew this was the most dangerous moment. The split second when pride drives desperate choices. "This is my last warning," Jasmine said, calm but commanding, her voice carrying across the silent cafeteria. "Take your hands off me voluntarily, or I'll do it for you." It wasn't a threat shouted in panic. It was a statement of fact, cold, certain, undeniable. Students instinctively stepped back, sensing something was about to happen. Derek looked at his father, at the cameras, at the crowd of students whose eyes no longer held fear, but defiance. His throne was crumbling beneath him, and he had no idea how to stop it. "When the powerful realize their power has limits," Madison whispered into her live stream, "their true nature is revealed. And sometimes it's uglier than anyone could imagine." Derek's face twisted. Instead of backing down, he doubled down. "I don't care who's recording," he shouted, yanking harder until Jasmine had to balance on her toes. "This school is mine. This town is mine. No one tells me what to do. It was the fatal mistake Jasmine had been waiting for. In less than 3 seconds, her years of training snapped into place. She gripped Derek's wrist with both hands, executed a precise Krav Maga twist that forced him to release her instantly, and in one fluid motion flipped his momentum into an arm lock that dropped him to his knees on the cafeteria floor. The silence that followed was absolute. Derek, the so-called untouchable, was pinned and powerless. The hold caused sharp pain with the slightest movement, but without lasting harm. Jasmine's breathing was calm, controlled, as if she'd simply stood from her seat. "That's assault!" Derek gasped, wincing when he tried to move. "She attacked me! Everyone saw it!" "Actually," James Mitchell said, raising his phone high, "we all saw you assault her first. And it's all on video." Richard Thompson Sr. had gone pale. He recognized a disaster when he saw one, a public relations nightmare unfolding live. Principal Hawthorne stepped forward carefully. "Miss Carter, please release him." "With all due respect, Principal," Jasmine said, her grip steady, "he assaulted me in front of hundreds of witnesses. I'll release him when I have assurance he won't touch me again." Madison's voice shook as she kept streaming. "Everyone watching, this is history. A student just defended herself against harassment, and it's all happening live." Tyler and Blake, once fearless beside Derek, now shrank into the background. "Man, I didn't do anything," Tyler muttered, fumbling to delete videos from his phone. "Too late," a voice cut in. It was Sarah Chun, president of the student newspaper. She held up her laptop, her screen glowing. "I've already archived your posts, jokes, comments, photos, mocking scholarship kids, months of it. It's all backed up." Derek's face contorted in panic. "You can't use that. It's private." "Public posts aren't private," Sarah replied firmly. "And as a future journalist, I know exactly what qualifies as public interest." "Derek, enough!" His father's voice cracked like a whip. Richard Thompson Sr. turned to Jasmine, his face a mix of shame and desperation. "Miss Carter, on behalf of my family, I apologize for my son's behavior." "Your apologies are irrelevant," Jasmine answered coldly. "What matters now are the consequences, and they're already in motion." As if summoned, the cafeteria doors swung open. A police officer strode in, voice firm and uncompromising. "We've received multiple reports of physical assault and intimidation." "Where are those involved?" Principal Hawthorne pointed reluctantly at Derek, still trapped on the floor. "Officer Martinez, we have a situation." "There's nothing delicate about an assault caught on camera," Martinez replied. His gaze turned to Jasmine. "Miss, you can let him go now. I'll take it from here." Jasmine released Derek with the same controlled precision she had used to subdue him. He stumbled back, clutching his arm, and for the first time, his eyes showed fear, not arrogance. "Derek Thompson," Officer Martinez said firmly, "you are under arrest for aggravated assault and intimidation." "My dad is going to sue this school," Derek shouted as the cuffs closed around his wrists. "You can't do this to me." "Derek," his father muttered, head bowed in defeat, "stop talking." Madison glanced at her phone and gasped. "Guys, there are 14,000 people watching live. This is going national within the hour." Tyler tried one last desperate plea. "Look, everyone, it's just a misunderstanding. Derek isn't. He was just nervous." "Tyler," James Mitchell cut him off, "you have 5 seconds to stop, or I show everyone the screenshots from the group chats where you plotted to teach the new girl a lesson." Tyler went pale. He stepped back in silence, realizing there was no escape. As Derek was led away, still ranting about influence and lawsuits, Principal Hawthorne approached Jasmine. "Miss Carter, would you like to speak in private?" "I'd prefer we talk publicly," Jasmine said calmly. "Transparency seems like a lesson this school needs." The cafeteria erupted in cheers. For the first time in Riverside Academy's history, someone had stood up to the system, and won. Richard Thompson Sr. tried one last gesture. "My company will donate to a scholarship fund. It's the least I can do." Jasmine's eyes held steady. "Mr. Thompson, money doesn't erase what your son did, or the years this behavior was tolerated. If you want to make a difference, start by teaching other parents that raising children without respect carries consequences." The cafeteria slowly returned to order, but nothing was the same. Madison ended her broadcast with trembling words, and that's how a 17-year-old girl transformed a school she thought would never change. What Derek never knew when he woke that morning was that his attempt to humiliate someone would become the very act that destroyed him. Within hours, he lost his place at Riverside, his reputation, his freedom, and the respect of the community. That night, Sarah Chun published her article. There are moments when life reveals our true nature. Some rise to greatness. Others reveal the rot that was always there. 6 months later, Jasmine Carter walked through Riverside Academy transformed. What began as an act of cruelty had become the spark for change. Derek Thompson was permanently expelled, his university admissions withdrawn. His viral downfall became a national case study on privilege and consequences. Tyler Harrison and Blake Morrison served 90-day suspensions, 300 hours of community service, and were quietly transferred to other schools by their embarrassed families. Richard Thompson Sr. donated $2 million to scholarships, but the scandal cost him key contracts after the mayor declared, "Companies that raise children without respect don't represent our values." And Jasmine? She thrived. Elected student body president by a landslide, awarded a full scholarship to Harvard, and invited to speak at national conferences on resilience and self-defense. Madison discovered her voice as a journalist. "Jasmine taught me that using your platform to amplify others is more powerful than any popularity." James Mitchell expanded the school's diversity programs. Michael Carter's Defense Academy quadrupled in enrollment. Most remarkable of all was the cultural shift. Students who had once stayed silent now stood up for one another. The phrase, "the Jasmine effect," spread across the campus, symbolizing the courage to face injustice head-on. And Riverside Academy would never be the same again. At graduation, Jasmine Carter stood before her classmates as valedictorian. "A year ago," she began, "someone tried to reduce me to a stereotype through violence and prejudice. He thought he was showing me my place, but all he showed was his own, at the bottom of the moral ladder." The auditorium erupted in thunderous applause, lasting 3 full minutes. "I've learned," Jasmine continued, "that true strength isn't about dominating others. It's about refusing to be dominated. It isn't about using privilege to hurt, but using talent to heal. And it's never about pushing people down, but lifting everyone up." When Jasmine stepped onto Harvard's campus months later, she carried more than her academic achievements. She carried the certainty that she had reshaped not only her own future, but the culture of an entire school. Derek Thompson had started that day determined to teach a girl her place. Instead, he learned the most expensive lesson of his life. Trying to humiliate someone based on prejudice doesn't just expose them, it exposes you for the entire world to see. Jasmine discovered that the best revenge wasn't destroying Derek. It was building something so bright that his cruelty looked small in comparison. She didn't just win a cafeteria battle, she rewrote the rules forever. If this story of resilience inspired you, make sure to subscribe and tell us in the comments. Have you ever faced prejudice, and how did you respond? Sometimes one person's courage is enough to transform an entire community.